Yeah, like a nonchalant in the studio moment. Okay, I'm ready.
That's how he is.
Okay, so we have truly found a new Nashville gem, and his name is Tommy Wiggins. So today we're gonna go check out his actually epic home studio setup, which was designed to do many things. Multi-track recording, mixing, and mastering, which he specializes in. I'm gonna put a link to his mastering website if you need some mastering down in the description. And like many of you, I think he also got into this whole studio thing so he could create, record, and write his own original music, which I'm gonna link down in the description. You gotta check it out, his Bandcamp down there. But above all, Tommy is a hilarious and very fun person to spend any amount of time with. I think you guys are gonna really love this interview that we're doing here. One thing Tommy and I both have in common is that we both absolutely love Sweetwater. I'm sure you do as well. Sweetwater sponsoring this studio tour. Check out some of the gear that I have here in my studio, which you may not recognize. Down in the description, there will be affiliate links to them. Thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. We have an absolutely fun time joking around about it in this tour. I think you're gonna love it.
Also,
if you didn't notice, we did move studios once or twice recently, which is gonna be a fun story for you to watch on my other channel, Studio Time. One of the best things about moving studios, if you've ever experienced it, is taking apart and resetting up a studio patch bay. If you're thinking about adding a patch bay to your studio, check out the description for links to all the stuff we use on ours. And if adding a patch bay to your studio is something that you've been considering, but you just are not totally sure on what to get and how to do it, check out our new patch bay course. I'm gonna link it down in the description. It's 20 bucks. It's a full comprehensive course on everything you need to know about patch bays and what to do and how to get one and set one up for your studio. 20 bucks again. Link down in the description. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's go check out Tommy Wiggins' epic home studio setup. Thank you so much for having us. Tell me about this amazing compound that you have here.
It really is a compound. This is like probably the 10th iteration of Tommy's tracks in various locations.
Wow.
We started this particular version right at the start of the pandemic. So of course the phone didn't ring for 6 months.
Yeah.
So I had time to build it. And
That's
Connor
amazing.
and another friend of ours. During that time, we also decided to go mobile so we could visit the kids and go around. So we invented Tommy's Tracks Mobile. There's hardly any internet service when you're in National Forest campgrounds, so all you have to do is write songs. And so I've written a couple whole albums worth of songs just in the last couple of years.
That's amazing. Just for people watching, let's kind of hit the list here. You've had a very storied career of a lot of different things, but from what I understand, along that whole journey, writing music and recording your own albums.
Yeah, in fact, everything that I do in the studio is in support of the songs.
Yeah.
Before there were actually home studios per se, you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And what we did is I started out in the early 70s. Instead of going to a regular studio that Bruce Swedien had done, we went to the basement and did our basement tapes like the band did,
Yeah.
Big Pink and the band. And it's been like home recording ever since. This is my 39th year of having a home studio.
Oh my gosh.
It's like I'm the granddad of home studios, right?
Yeah.
It's been a real journey. Along the way, I was able to start and direct 2 recording schools, we've trained thousands of musicians how to record their own material.
All right.
And that's really a great, feeling.
Yeah, of course.
I've learned and recorded on just about every format there has been, since the early 70s.
That's amazing. Looking forward to your AI version of your career.
Right. Well, but you got to feed it, right?
Yeah,
AI's got to get the good stuff so it can create what it feels is going to be the next good stuff, right?
Terrified and looking forward to it.
Ooh, I'm still going to be writing songs with my notebook in the woods.
I love
but then
that.
I'll bring them to whatever studio that's going to happen. And my motto is rock until the wheels fall off.
I love it. Tell me about this whole thing. There's a lot going on here. We've got the van.
Got the mobile rig. Everything is fenced in. We got a little studio hang for the studio cats, and we got on the other side of the house there's a pool and a gazebo. So when you're tired or if it's not your turn yet, you can hang by the pool.
Oh, I love that.
So,
it's not always nice having a place to send people that's pleasant to be in, and it is absolutely beautiful over there.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a beautiful day.
I just want to touch on what this house was and sort of what you've done. This seems like a classic Nashville 60s ranch. Just kind of tell me the thought and the design behind it, because it's pretty cool.
You're correct in saying that it's a 60s ranch. So it's all on one level, except for this used to be the garage. The owner before us turned it into a media room, but it was really just kind of a slapdash kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I conned my wife into letting me have the garage and what was originally the old kitchen. So that's kind of the studio complex.
Ah.
And because I've been building recording studios since the late 70s,
Yeah.
I have a background in carpentry. I could never afford to go to other places, so I've always had to build my own.
Yeah.
We basically gutted everything. And this is the first studio I've ever done that I actually hired the framers and hired the drywall cats and hired the electricians. But other than that, I've always had to, me and my buddies have built it. So I've taught acoustics and recording studio design at the college level. I know how it's done because I've been reading ever since the 70s of, recording studios, what can you do, etc. And so along the way, I've gotten the schools to be able to help design what I felt the dream is for the recording schools. I've had the good fortune of hiring John Stork from Walter Stork. His first commission was Electric Ladyland.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've also had the great fortune to work with Russ Berger, who's done NFL films, and the Sweetwater Studios, right? So, and then there was a guy before that, Steve Orfield, who has built in the Guinness Book of Records quietest room in the universe.
Oh my gosh.
So I've been able to, glean, just because I'm interested in studios and design and construction, to be able to use those for my own studios as well.
I love that. Well, we're gonna just, as we go through, just steal all of the things that you've learned, and we'll all use it in our setups.
Okay. Not that you haven't done the same thing.
Well, this is what I do. I go to people's places and I steal all their great ideas. It's great.
Yes, glean. And stealing is good.
Yes.
Right, it's sharing. Sharing.
Sharing,
is,
Well, that's the thing, we all get to benefit from it.
So come on in.
All right.
So what you see here is a space that's 24 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 10 feet tall. And the tall is the good, important part. And for my work, what I do is, because I write and then I record my own stuff, and to pay for my recordings, I master other people's music. So the studio has to be two different things. It has to be like a tracking room so that you can cut songs. And it also has to have a really good sweet spot for mastering. And so what you see around us, the equipment-wise, is actually just two different systems. One's a mastering system and one is the one for recording. I knew I had to have some booths. I knew I had to have a drum room. I knew I had to have a vocal booth or percussion group. I knew I had to have a couple of places for amplifiers, and my favorite, Leslie. And luckily I have an office upstairs, so that's another booth. When we started ripping the old stuff down, we realized that there's concrete steps like went from the office all the way down. So I went, oh, now I have to design something, it was actually a good deal. So I lopped 4 foot off the side and turned this part into a galley, turned this into an amp room, which we'll look at, and then a drum room, and then put the booth off the side. In a recording room, you want things to be somewhat symmetrical. So we've got the drums on one side and the booth on the other side. I've always been, since the early days, more into what was formerly known as live end, dead end room, where you deaden the front space and you then leave the live space so that the early reflections don't hit your ears milliseconds after the direct sound. So the sweet spot really is right here. In the previous space, it was the same gear, but we had an MCI console at that time, a 428 for those who are keeping score, and we just weren't getting the definition. And my dear and now departed friend, Mark Rubel, I was going to have lunch with him one day, and all of a sudden our lunch mate was Chris Huston. Chris Huston had been in bands since the Liverpool days and had recorded just a litany, just Chris, Huston. And you'll see what he's done. He's recorded all the classic things of the late 60s and early 70s. Well, he's turned into a designer. And he said, well, okay, with these measurements, Tommy, what we need to do is we need to move the speakers back 9 inches. And we did, and holy cow, all of a sudden, we weren't in the trough, the bass trough. We finally, hit the sweet spot. So I guess there's 4 different acousticians that I've learned from all those years. There weren't any schools to go to at the time to be able to do this work. So I would read modern recording techniques, and I would also read, building home studios by a guy named Alton Everest. He was like the granddaddy of acoustics. So those are the guys that I learned from, and then you just start doing your own thing. So in my live end, dead end, we've got 4 inches of 703 or rock wool kind of rimming the whole area so that the B&W speakers can hit me right in the sweet spot, and I'm not hearing early reflections off the sides.
Yeah.
And then we had to put this cloud in so that things, could absorb up the top. Okay, so now I got mastering covered. You have to diffuse and absorb. Those are all homemade, home-constructed diffusers, and behind them there's an absorptive quality. And then we all learned by doing. We would start building the different traps, and here's a construction technique for just the home people. You think that if you have a 703 and you put wrap a fabric around it, it'll be good. Well, what you're still doing is you're sucking up the highs. So we put this craft paper in the front of it so the high frequencies can roll off so it can be more natural.
I love that.
Yeah, and there's different types of things that you can buy. I call it lumberyard EQ. And so in the lumberyard EQ, what we do is, this is one of Greg Mackey's early thing called Audio Control. And it's a 31 band RTA where you can take different measurements with, an Omni mic, calibrated mic, and then you take measurements in different areas and you plot out your room. And then you can see what your trough is. And then my way of doing it is, okay, let's deal with the bass first. So then you build your absorbers. And okay, what do we got going in the mid-range? So then you got to build your more diffusions. And are we lacking, or do we have to cut the highs a little bit? So it's lumberyard EQ.
Yeah.
You go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards or whatever, the place is near you, and you start building your room. But just my advice is, just don't think that deadening everything is the good thing. You can just make it too dead. Oh, but then we have reverbs.
I've gone back and forth on that through the different studios I've done in my homes, and the last room that I did, I went really dead. And it was an A-frame bonus room above a garage, but it had a stairwell in the back, and there was a half wall, so the low end on 25% of the back wall went back 5 feet further than the rest. It was pretty good. Not perfect by any means, but you know, I'm also tracking in there, so very dead drums and very dead everything. Once I moved out of there and got in this new situation with this essentially freestanding, like big, I mean, you saw it the other day, gobos.
Big gobos, yeah, they were like 8
that
feet
added
tall.
space behind them, so it's actually trapping stuff. And I didn't realize like how much my room was just sucking up all of sound. Like I would have to crank, I'd have to crank it up so loud. And I'm like, man, it still feels like kind of quiet in here, even when it's blasting loud. So it's, that's something I've learned over the years that you can go way too far on. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the history of recording, because in the beginning, like 50s and 60s, you know, they were one room and all the cats were in the same room and had to balance with each other.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden multitrack came, and so now, we're going to put so many mics on the drums, and how do we keep the drums out? Well, we baffle them off from everything else, and we'll add an EMT plate or something in, you know, whatever, you know, reverb they had.
I wanted to ask about some of the materials.
Sweetwater will like that. Okay, you're asking about, you know, the materials. You know, it's a potpourri of whatever a room needs. What I discovered was that Auralex, who made, you know, the original foam that then died and started disintegrating, you know, years later, also made a styrofoam product. So what you're seeing up in here are actually styrofoam, and they're paintable without changing the acoustic treatment, you know, because it's more diffusion. And they're very light. They sell them in like 15 packs, and they're 2x2, so you can stick them in a ceiling grid if you want. And in our case, we just decided we needed to put them everywhere. And in the corners, developed kind of a triangle where we have a fabric end, and then put some fiberglass, just regular loose bad fiberglass in the back behind it, and then just screw it to the ceiling. It's real simple. Yeah. And very effective, and it hides the trap door as well.
Oh yeah, that's great for the attic.
Yeah.
More specifically than that, I actually meant with ceiling tile.
Oh, the ceiling tile.
Like, do you know what kind of material that is?
You really want is the kind with the holes in it.
Yes.
So that in the old 50s and 60s schools that you see them, they actually sell those, but because they cost too much money, I just use Armstrong, whatever the kind of like, you know, it's just got a little bit of a texture to it, so there's a little bit of diffusion. You know, they're 1/2 inch thick, so we're getting absorption. Yeah. You know, and you have to look at the kind of, well, what's it going to do? It's only going to absorb the highs. It's not going to do anything for the lows. But in my last 1, 2, 3, 4 studios, I've just gone to the lumberyard, bought a box of those things, and glue them up, and staple them up to, you know, just whatever ceiling it is, and trim it out at the end. And and it's about the cheapest thing going. I would like to get some of the older style ones that, you know, with all the holes in it. You just want to have it sound natural, because I can hear the sound of sheetrock, and the sound of drywall is not good in a recording.
Of course.
And especially with everybody's bonus rooms, like in Nashville, it's like, you know, that's how we have these extra spaces. Yep. And when you have an A-frame, you're so close to, on the sides, to what it is. So you got to start diffusing those things.
Yep. I'm going to ask about your setup here. So the way that you're using this room is the way that I think a lot of us are, which is for multi-purpose, right? Mastering, but also creating, writing, and then being able to track and, I don't know, maybe cook or host parties or something.
That's in the galley.
Oh, in the galley, okay.
Right. And the smoker's lounge is way back there.
Oh, yeah. It's an interesting space because you said it's 24 feet long.
24.
You've got a lot of stuff in here. What, 5 booths? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, kind of?
Yeah.
Or 5, no, because the upstairs, right?
The upstairs, and we track in here at the same time. So we can get a 5-piece band happening.
So something that is a big deal, at least to me, when I work in a studio or I'm living in a studio, is the desk situation. Now, your desk situation is super cool. Can you just walk me through it a little bit?
Yeah, my desk situation has to do with being able to master.
Yes.
So you don't want all kinds of stuff in front of you, in front of the speakers. So you want a clean line of sight and the least amount of obstruction between the speakers and my ears. And so I went with a design of a couple of lowboy racks and a monitor system, and I found this little desk on Craigslist for 50 bucks. Of course, everything else cost way more.
Yeah.
But to me, it works because I can sit in the sweet spot and I'm getting the 12-inch speakers as well as seeing the mids and the highs, and I pretty much have a clear to the back of my ears, because you want basically an equilateral triangle when you're mixing or mastering. And I've got the ability to deal with 2 different systems at a time. This is the mastering system. So everything is here and I can kind of like, work it and still be kind of within the sweet spot. And other than these duressors, which I love, love, love. Thank you again, Sweetwater. And the A to D conversion over here, I'm pretty much set. And for tracking, that's this side. So I've got my original 1176 that I started working with at the studio that I worked in 1978. So I've actually worked on this with this machine since like then.
That's
which
great.
is amazing.
It's in great condition too.
Yeah, it certainly is. I've had 3 in the rack at one time. That's kind of really gear porn.
Yeah.
But you have to reallocate resources. So everything is kind of like functional and right with you. I've been part of the whole revolution of home recording, So an epic recording studio, home recording studio back in the 70s and early 80s is much different than it is now, of course. But I've gone through all kinds of formats. I could list all the formats. But what I decided is that now that I finally trusted the sound of plugins, and I was not a believer, but then they kept getting better and better and better. And finally I said, yes, I'm going to do this. And so away went the venerable MCI 428 that had come out of Dynamic Sounds in Kingston, Jamaica, that was commissioned in '74. Finally said goodbye to that. And recently I said goodbye to the Manley mic mixer, which is a 16-input mic mixer.
Oh yeah.
It just sounds awesome. And I'm surprised that it really, didn't catch on, although, the price was pretty manly.
Yeah, of course.
I started with Apollo, because I've always, since 1978, I've been a UA believer. And so I started drinking the Apollo Kool-Aid, and when Luna came out right in the pandemic, I just kind of went full force Luna. So I'm just getting ready to sell the radar system that I've had since the early 2000s. I went a whole hog. I love the sound of the converters. I love the sound of their unison preamps, and I'm getting really good drum sounds. So
yeah.
I bought an 8P just for the drums, but I'm never going to give up some of this stuff because it just adds such a good color to everything. So that's kind of my system right now. As far as the mastering side, we have a Lynx system. We use WaveLab to do the mastering side. So it's basically 2 different studios in one. Wait, two different ones in one.
It's pretty incredible.
It's very lean, really good sounding. I've even done a bunch of research, and my assistant Connor and I have built a system to where I can even do mastering in the van. That's a little tricky because I've been used to these B&W 801s for 20 years now. The key to being a mastering engineer is knowing your room, knowing your speakers, having the right amplifier, which is a Bryston 4B, and really knowing your gear. And all of a sudden going to a set of headphones, what headphones do you use, to recreate what you've been hearing? So what we have in the headphone department is I went with the Focal Clear Pro Clears, and I have a really good quality DAC called a Mojo 2, and I've got my laptop. And so all the plugins that we use give me the same kind of flow in mastering.
How is that for you? Like, as a workflow, does it feel like, because you can go anywhere, right?
You can go anywhere, but I'm confident in mastering a single, but I'm not confident yet of doing a whole album.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, again, I've been listening to these guys for 20 years, and I've been listening to these for like a year.
Yeah.
And you know, the low end is so important. Mids and highs are pretty easy to get with headphones.
Yeah.
But the lows are just like, you know, it's harder to do. In terms of mastering, you know, there's a similar flow where you listen to the material, you try to get a vibe of where the folks who are giving it to you, who have listened to it hundreds of hours, somebody's approved, there's a bunch of money and time spent on this stuff. You want to do it justice. So that's usually, for me, it's figure out what the baseline sound is going to be, and then work from there with EQ from the bottom up, and then compression, and then bringing it back A to D. I mean, I could go through a whole mastering lesson, but
we'll save that for another video.
Save that for another video. But basically, then it's the AD conversion and make the record sound as good as you can. And once I've done that, then Connor does the digital deliveries back to the clients.
That's awesome.
This place works.
Yeah.
This place works. And it's a combination of old and new, tried, true, and what are we gonna do next?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Can we check out some of these booths?
Yes.
And some of the rest of the space?
Yeah.
You want to start out with the drum booth?
Yeah, let's start in the drum booth. You can see the studs and the insulation. This is a double wall with airspace in between. Double doors. I always use 1 3/4 solid core doors. Up until now, I've always built the frames themselves. In this particular one, I bought pre-hung solid core doors with thresholds as well, just because I'm too old for that stuff.
Oh, hanging doors is a nightmare.
Oh,
It
and
is
then
a
getting
nightmare.
everything solid and getting everything working
And straight.
and straight.
Oh,
and,
God.
Right, and I've always had smaller spaces, so I kind of look at my recording studios as cabins.
Yeah.
And the mobile is the cabinette, so to speak. Again, we have 10-foot ceilings, so we can drop down. There's just a single wall construction between this and the regular house, and that's really the outside brick wall of the house.
Oh, okay.
So we're building outside of it. So double wall construction. This is double wall construction. And then the weak point would be the high frequencies if they're coming through the doors, but you're so far back and it's not been an issue. Barry and I built just a ton of different baffles. And again, I'm always using, and I'm a proponent of this craft paper in the front, because if you look at the books, you can just see what the difference is. In the first recording school that I started in Minneapolis, the first students and I ended up building these things. And so Steve Glazer, again, departed friend and companion and engineer, he came up with the idea of the paper front.
That's very cool.
And to me, that was a game changer for working with Johns Manville 703. So, you want to come up?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a small, tight spot, but it has room. I've got my original 1985 AKG 414s and a bunch of 57s just hanging out everywhere.
Yeah.
And we got an Audix D6 and a homemade sub kick on that. And it's the original 1967 Ludwig kit with a really wonderful Rogers snare. The original cymbals that came with the kit, and I've got the original kick drum Speed King pedal, but can't. It doesn't really work that well.
Yeah.
It's okay if you're kind of playing light, you know, like you could see on a Beach Boys record or something.
Yeah.
But probably Hal Blaine, who played on those records, didn't even use those. Very good sounding kit.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, homemade 2-foot square diffusers or absorbers in different thicknesses, so that you're absorbing different frequencies, and then you just kind of like, okay, this one looks good that way. Okay, this one looks good this way, and you just like set them in. And then these guys are just 4 inches of 703. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff up on top. That's just a fabric ceiling that we put together. And then there's different layers. You know, it goes up 10 feet.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, it's a good, really good bass trap. And, you know, more of the Auralex diffusers, my mind just blanked. You know, Auralex diffusers.
Yeah. That's great.
So
Cool.
you know, it's a really good sounding room, a nice tight room. I like a real dry, kind of old school sound, which works for my music because I'm a dry old school guy. Okay, so let's go to another. Here's a fun room. This has to do a whole bunch of things, and what it is, it's the amp closet. Connor's got it wired up so that we can either go with 2 mics on one. We've got some Beyer 101s and a Beyer 69 and an RE20 for the bass. We really don't use that hardly at all.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll pull that and start using the RE20 on something else, because we mostly go direct or a B15 plug-in.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And storage and whatnot going all the way up to the ceiling.
You guys have a bunch of instruments in here, and they're all connected to this thing over here. Tell me about it.
So this is Frank. We refer to him nicely as Frank. It's the Franklin DI, made in Australia. It's just a 6-switcher DI box, all stereo. So you got 6 stereo DI inputs, and then you can just switch between them, and then you're getting fed whatever you have selected. And right now we have the through of it hooked up to a Leslie pedal. So anything we select here goes right to the Leslie. So we can have the wave drum go through the Leslie. We can have the Korg organ, the Nord. There we go.
Okay.
Or any of that. And it's super easy. And I highly recommend that.
Okay, so it's going to a DI, but it's also going through to the pedal
Yes.
that goes to the Leslie.
Yeah, it's most DIs got their little DI through on them, and you can run it to an amp or whatever. But in this case, we're like, Leslie. Who doesn't love a Leslie? Let's do that.
And then you have mics on the Leslie, so you can get the DI and the mics.
All we have to do is hit input, and it's all normaled in through the bay, and we're done. It's easy.
That's
2
awesome.
buttons.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, man.
So,
Awesome.
And then we've got the galley and the Leslie closet. Should I come in or do you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is storage of my CDs and the Leslie, which again is mic'd surely, so to speak. And then we're saying goodbye to this nice piece. Oh my God, I love you. You know, I've played hundreds of gigs live with this particular beast. And it's still going strong. And we've got a little sink and a little refrigerator and storage and things, and copies of old strip tapes from albums. You know, and just memorabilia.
That had to have been fun putting that little kitchenette in there, huh?
Yes, yeah. Actually, this top and here were the only things that I saved when we ripped out everything else. And so we ended up building around it. The deal of going 4 feet out from this outside wall was because we could all of a sudden have a room that could be symmetrical and also have get the booths.
Yeah.
And going up here, you can
A lot of records on the wall here.
a lot of records. Yeah, again, the reason that I build studios and work in studios and master other people's records is to be able to record my own music. And so I started Chili Dog Records in 1980. If you go to TommyWiggins.com, you can basically listen to everything except the one that Dominion Entertainment owns and won't sell me back the rights to. Come on, you guys. It's not making you money. I need it. It's mine. But I've had, Chili Dog Records is about ready to release we're in our 48th or 49th album.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Or release,
Yeah.
of which maybe there's 36 full-length albums of my music. So it's
Wow.
like, come on.
That is a ton.
And then
It's amazing.
up here, if you care, is my office and the storage and the archives and one of the 5 Emmys that we were earned for the television shows Crooked River Groove and Words and Music that I hosted for 12 years.
Man, what a cool office.
It's
One-
pretty vibey.
It's nice to just have another space for, stuff like this, but also for storage that's not
Yeah.
in the same room you're working in.
Exactly. And there's the archives. For one of my next projects is to organize the archives. And I'm the keeper of the flame for our first band from 1972, which is Freeland. We actually have a trio of records we first made in that basement studio in 72. We got together again maybe about midway. And this last year, we finished our Swan Song album. And since then, 2 of our guys passed away.
Oh, man.
So, but 6 people who original music was what we lived for.
Yeah.
And these guys started me off, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it because they started me off in songwriting and recording. It's a wonderful legacy, and those records are also available on the Bandcamp. Basically, TommyWiggins.com goes to the Bandcamp site,
Yeah.
and you can just there's millions of stories. So anyway,
cool.
that's kind of the size of this. And hello, this was a Goodwill find in an urban Goodwill.
Oh, nice.
I think it's
Pretty
kind of
unique.
cool.
Yeah.
You want it? Would that work in your place?
I am trying to get rid of things.
Okay, well,
We have too many things to move already.
my wife says I should be getting rid of things too. So I just, it'll go to a good home eventually. So now the last booth that we're going to go see is the vocal booth. I do a lot of my vocals and acoustic guitar in here. And also we have our complete acoustic percussion department. I'm a slut for anything that makes noise and rattles, just little trinkets, little sparklies. And I also have been practicing yoga for about, getting on 20 years now. And I've created instrumental albums of that kind of music. So I might take some loops or something, and then I'll add different parts, or maybe just this becomes the rhythm part, and then we do instrumental music as well.
great.
Also available at the Bandcamp site.
Link in the description.
Right. Exactly. And thank you for doing all that.
Yeah,
too.
of course.
How can I build a bridge to you? It's not impossible to do. Start by finding common ground. Something solid, something sound. I will listen to your heart. If you vow to do your part, hear my story too. It's all I'm asking you. Nothing there to prove. Building natural bridges. Natural bridges. Hey, I'm Tommy Wiggins, and I've had just such a great time with being part of the Epic Studio. Man, what a tour. And thanks for including me. And I hope to see all of you guys down the road somewhere. This is a new song of mine that I wrote in this van last year. And my good buddy Phil Solon from the Rembrandts produced for me. Check it out on the website. Love y'all, and keep on that home recording. natural bridges.